In this video we'll talk about pre-filling those gaps in your drywall, especially in home renovation jobs. I'll show you how to mix up some quick set plaster, and then we'll talk about what to pre-fill and how to do it. All that and more coming right up. Hi guys, I'm Brad McKinnon, a drywall finisher, plasterer and stopper. I'm here in New Zealand, and on this channel we talk about all things plastering and drywall finishing. And today it's all about pre-filling those bigger gaps, especially in the home renovation or the home remodeling jobs. And it's always better to fill those before we start even taping in. And we call this pre-filling. And especially it's those bigger gaps that we want sort of flush and flat before we even start taping in. And normally we do that with some quick set plaster, and I'll show you how to mix them up in a bucket. Just by adding water first, and you want to add your powder to the water, and I like to just add sort of small bits as we go and mix it up. And because if you put too much in at the first go, it's going to be a mission to mix up. It's going to get too thick and it'll be too hard to mix by hand. So we'll just add small bits at a time till it starts getting thick, and I'm using a gauging trowel. I find that's the best way to mix up in a bucket, especially a decent amount without using a drill. And we'll just whip that up till all those lumps are gone. I'm using a 45-minute quick set plaster. That's about enough time to go around and fill all the gaps in this job. And any larger gaps, I like to just cut some drywall and fill those, but when they're sort of like this one here, you can just fill it with plaster. So we'll just go around, and any bigger gaps just need to be filled and flushed out. See these ones here, especially where it's new meeting existing, it's always never sort of flush or the same. So it's always good to bring those out to a flush finish, so when we tape in and put our tape on, it's going to be pretty good from the get-go. Now these ones here, you can see that once I get the plaster on here, you can see that one of the boards has the factory recess edge, or the other one just has a square edge. So it's not flush or level, and just by pre-filling that one side, we're just bringing it up nice and level. And of course, we let this fully dry before we start taping in. And it's just a matter of getting it as neat as can be. You can see here this used to be a corner bead. Obviously a new wall's been put on to an existing. There's quite a big difference there, so we're just going to fill that one out before we put the corner bead on, just to get it a bit more squarer, so that corner bead can sort of fit out flush with the other side of the corner. And that's the better way of mixing up your gauge a bit thicker. If it's too thin, it could just run off, so you want it to be quite thick, just to get that better adhesion. So I'm just building that out. You can see there's actually a joint there, so once that's dry and I've got the corner bead on, I'll be putting some fiberglass tape over that, tying that all together. But we'll just clean off the external as we go, keep things nice and tidy. And again, once that's set, I'll come back and just scrape that, just get it nice and flat, and take any high bits off. We're just getting it as neat as we can. Not perfect because there's another 3 coats to go on after this. Now this one here is quite a big gap. Normally I'd put some plasterboard in there, but there was a steel beam running through there and there was just no room for plasterboard to fit. So we'll just fill that up with a quick set. and obviously this old place had timber scotia around the tops of the ceiling there, so they've removed that and they wanted all square set finish. So we need to fill all these gaps first. And that's a good little tip there, just coming back along the ceiling, the edge of your knife, and just sort of helps push it into that gap. So just clean off any dangly bits first. Don't want those sort of dragging into the mud. Just sort of force that plaster in there. We want to fill that gap right up. And you might find that once you force it in, sort of clean it off, it's still going to sort of bulge out a bit. And that's why we come back once it's set and just sort of scrape it back flush as well. Just check all those ones once it's all set. Because it's easier to scrape it off when it's still wet. When it's set but not fully dry, it's easier to scrape back. If we leave that to fully dry out, that'll be rock hard, so it'll take a bit of scraping back. You can see there the scotia's been pulled off right around the room. Again, the light fittings changed position, so we'll just pre-fill that. Bit of a hole there. So we'll just press that up into the ceiling as much as we can. Force that plaster up. So it sort of comes in over the top of the ceiling and grips on. And again, that'll sort of hang down a bit as it's setting. So once it's set, we'll come back and just scrape that off flat. So we'll just speed this one up here. We're going right around the room. A little tricky bit there with that heat pump. It's getting in over the top. There's little bits and pieces everywhere where they've been running wires, and the electricians cut openings everywhere and had to put the plasterboard back. Of course there's gaps and they all need to be pre-filled. Especially you get a lot of this in remodeling or renovation jobs. Again, you can see here the existing is meeting a new, so it's always different. And you can see there I've actually cut that existing plasterboard on an angle with my knife, just because that was sticking out a bit, wasn't exactly level, and that edge can be a bit loose and dangly, so we'll just cut all that off on an angle. And again, that new piece had a factory reset edge on it, so we're just going to fill all that, flush it out nice and flat if we can. Just makes life a lot easier when doing the first coat, the taping in coat. Again here, these might not look too bad, but it's always good just to put some plaster in there. You find if you don't pre-fill it and you just start taping in, you'll find that it sort of shrinks back into the gap. Now here, this gap here was quite a big one, so I've cut strips of plasterboard and stuck it in. You can see that there. Otherwise, if it gets too big, it just sort of takes a while to dry as well. Just doing all these little gaps in the joints, gaps in the internal corners and holes, and again, here's another external corner that had a new piece put on. So stuff like that, this all needs pre-filling, just makes life a lot easier, and it's always good to use a quick setting plaster, just because when the gaps get too big, quick set plaster doesn't shrink as much as air drying plaster, and air drying plaster will just take too long to dry, so always use quick set plaster. Hope this helps if you're renovating your home. If you enjoyed this video, hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up. All this helps me make more videos. Leave a comment If you have a question, I'll do my best to answer all your questions. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.